Hey, what's up everyone? How's it going? This is Waj. Hope you guys are all doing well. So the new 2016 MacBook Pro came out several weeks ago, had quite a bit of time with it thus far. And what I want to do is specifically compare it against the previous generation MacBook Pro with the Retina display, specifically the 2015 version. And what we're going to do is basically take a look at the external changes as well as the internal changes and see if it's worth upgrading to or even worth getting as a standalone high performance notebook computer. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Now what you're looking at is the 13-inch version of both the 2016 and 2015 MacBook Pro, and the new model is certainly a lot more compact. In terms of overall thickness and weight, Apple has managed to shrink down the size of the notebook quite significantly. It now only measures about just under 1.5 centimeters in terms of thickness versus the older generation measured about 1.8, and it's also lighter, measuring about 1.3 kilograms versus the older generation at 1.5 kilograms. Additionally, the overall footprint of the new computer is also smaller. The one thing I really like about the new MacBook is that the bezels are a lot thinner, so therefore you have a much more of a screen presence on the computer, which definitely looks pretty cool. Additionally, you have the second generation low profile keyboard on the new computer, first introduced in the MacBook, and this is using the butterfly mechanism that some people may or may not be too fond of. I personally like the previous generation keyboard a little bit better, even though the keycaps themselves are a little bit smaller. I just find it gives you a little bit more of a tactile sensation and gives me a little bit more feedback, but it's nothing that you can't get used to. The biggest design change that I am a huge fan of definitely has to be the larger trackpad. It has almost double the surface area as the previous generation MacBook Pro, and of course it's non-mechanical just like the previous generation, so it has the haptic feedback system that gives you the impression of a mechanical clicking sensation, even though the actual trackpad doesn't move itself. But all in all, this is probably one of my favorite trackpads on any notebook right now. The bigger the better, in my opinion, especially if you're going to do a lot of gestures, and it gives you precise control over everything that you're doing. Now, the biggest claim to fame on the new MacBook Pros definitely has to be the touch bar interface, which is effectively a secondary display with capacitive touch technology, as well as a fingerprint or touch ID scanner located on the top right side of the bar. Now, obviously, the cool thing about this touch bar is that the function of the bar can be infinitely customized depending upon what you're doing with your computer. So depending upon what kind of apps you're using at the current time, you'll find different functionalities and different buttons accessible to you right then and there on top of your keyboard. And after using it for a couple of weeks now, I am a pretty big fan of the touch bar. So for example, if you're browsing the web and you open up a new tab, you get access to some of your favorite bookmarks. And of course, you can configure your favorite websites to be accessible right then and there. You can also really easily switch between multiple tabs, and you get a little preview of the tab itself. The resolution of the touch bar isn't tremendously high, but it's fairly clear and fairly sharp for most button commands that you're going to see on there. And it's going to be really interesting to see how more and more apps are going to take advantage of this touch bar. Of course, if you want to save a little bit of money and don't care about all these gimmicky kind of things, you can also get the new MacBook Pro without it. Now, moving on, probably one of the most controversial properties of the new MacBook Pro definitely has to be regarding connectivity. And just like the new iPhone, Apple has pretty much ditched all the conventional stuff that you would find on a premium notebook. Besides a 3.5mm headphone jack, you have nothing but USB Type-C ports, which is great for the future, but kind of a bummer right now. And essentially, you charge, connect data, connect monitors all through this one port. Now, with this computer, you have 4 USB Type-C connections, and the properties of them technically are fantastic. It has Thunderbolt capabilities, so you can transfer data up to 40 gigabits per second, as well as USB 3.1 Gen 2 technology up to 10 gigabits per second. Of course, you can hook up different monitors with up to 5K resolution at 60 Hz refresh rate, and every one of these ports are enabled with the charging technology, so so you can easily connect any of these ports to the included USB Type-C charger and charge your computer. Now, all this is great, but that means that for the vast majority of people, you're going to have to buy some annoying adapters, which is probably one of the biggest problems with this computer. You don't have an SD card slot, you don't have a conventional USB Type-A connector, and of course, many of the other things that you would like to find on a conventional notebook is not going to be found over here, such as an HDMI connection. If you want to hook this up to a conventional display, you're going to have to buy a whole bunch of different accessories that may not be USB Type-C compatible and deal with annoying adapters, which is always frustrating. Now, moving on, let's actually talk about some real benefits of this new machine compared to the older generation. Firstly, the Retina display is pretty much the same resolution. So in terms of clarity and sharpness, it's identical to the previous generation from my eyes, but the big thing that has changed is certainly brightness. It's now 500 nits compared to 300 nits in terms of luminosity, and it has a wider color gamut. It goes actually beyond the sRGB color spectrum with a wider P3 color gamut spectrum. So the colors coming through the display really look very, very vibrant in person. It's kind of hard to tell probably on the YouTube quality, but in real life, if you look at them side by side, you can certainly see that the contrast ratio, the black levels, and certainly how bright the new display is certainly comes through beyond just the resolution. Additionally, internally, we have obviously upgraded the CPU and GPU on the 2016 models. This is specifically the baseline configuration for the 13-inch MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar interface. So it comes stock with a Intel Core i5 processor, which is a dual-core chip that is clocked in around 2.9 gigahertz, and it can turbo up to 3.3 gigahertz. And on the previous generation, 2015 MacBook Pro, the baseline configuration for the Retina model, it was using a Core i5 5257, which comes in at a lower frequency, but it's still a dual-core Core i5. And in terms of graphics, we're now using the Intel integrated 550 graphics versus 6100 series graphics on the previous generation. Additionally, when it comes to RAM, both have 8 gigabytes of RAM, but it is clocked faster on the 2016 model, about 2133 megahertz versus 1866 megahertz. Probably is not going to make a big difference for most people out there. Additionally, when it comes to the storage configuration, we have a 256 gigabyte SSD drive, which is PCIe based, similar technology of what we find on the 2015 MacBook Pro, but the throughput on the new SSD drive is much faster. In fact, if you take a look at Blackmagic speed test results, you can see that we're getting just over 2 gigabytes a second read speeds versus about 1.4 gigabytes a second on the 2015 model, and about 1.3 gigabytes per second in terms of write versus the previous generation got around 680 megabytes a second in terms of write speed. So that means installing software, opening up certain applications, and indeed initially booting up your computer is going to be a significant difference that you will actually notice compared to the previous generation. Probably one of the best parts of this computer is the new SSD PCI Express system built inside. Now what we're going to do is just take a look at my raw CPU and GPU benchmark results. We did a number of different tests, and I'm going to stop talking over here so you can evaluate the results yourself. So as you saw from the benchmark results, unsurprisingly, in pretty much every scenario, the new processor is faster. That's pretty much to be expected with better CPU and GPU technology from Intel. Just to wrap up the comparison, some of the things that we should briefly go over is that we do have Bluetooth 4.2 compared to Bluetooth 4.0 compared to the previous generation MacBook Pro. And we do have slightly better speakers than the previous generation, a MacBook Pro, a little bit louder, and it gives you a wider overall bass response compared to the previous generation. Nothing that's going to blow you out of the water. You're still going to probably use your headphones or a decent pair of studio monitors to get better overall sound. But generally speaking, besides all those things, the battery life itself is more or less the same when it comes to web browsing, but we do have a larger capacity on the previous generation. It had a 74.9 watt hour lithium polymer battery versus the new MacBook Pro has a 54.5 watt hour lithium polymer battery. But with the new processor and better overall software efficiency and better overall cooling technology, the web browsing should be fairly comparable across the two different platforms. But besides all those things, guys, that's really it. Now, generally speaking, obviously the 2016 will replace the 2015, and you will soon enough have no longer the option to buy the 2015 model of the Retina MacBook Pro, but it's still an excellent computer in my opinion, and if you can get one at a good price, I would probably still go over that, even compared to the new generation, which is still a fantastic piece of engineering and design, even though there's some compromises regarding the connectivity issue, but that in time will probably not be a big issue as USB-C gets more and more ubiquitous and more universal. But really on that, guys, that's really it. Now we will have a comparison between the new MacBook Pro that we have over here compared to probably one of the best computers out there, especially for battery life, the MacBook Air, the 2015 current generation. So definitely check out that video. You'll find that in the description down below. Other than that, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later. Take care.